Chapter 35. I talked to the producer for the call-in radio talk show I was supposed to do on 9/11. He said he'd call me back to reschedule. It took a few months until things got back to somewhat normal, but you knew somebody in the Middle East is going to pay for this, and justifiably so. Meanwhile, Ed Fisher, who was once the mayor of Philadelphia and who wanted to bring riverboat casino gambling to the banks of the Delaware, has thrown in his hat for governor of the state of Pennsylvania. The first thing on his agenda if he becomes governor is to legalize casino gambling throughout the state. He's pitching that the gaming tax revenues will save the floundering horse racing industry and eliminate property tax for all seniors. It wasn't long after that when I got a call from the radio talk show producer. They want me to come in that week to talk about my book. I got to the radio station a half hour early. The producer takes me into the studio. He introduces me to the host of the show, a guy they call Terrible Herb. He told me he loved my book and can't wait to talk about what I've written on the show. I took a seat across from him. He handed me headphones. I put them on. I never did anything like this before, but I wasn't nervous. If anything, I was anxious to tell my story. He opened up the show by introducing me and talked a little about my book. It didn't take long before the call board lit up with calls. Most of the callers, even the ones who patronized Atlantic City casinos, agreed with me that having casinos in our backyards that are open 24/7 is going to be a problem for many Pennsylvanians. Then there were those who called in and brought up the personal responsibility card. They're the ones who believe they're amongst the majority of those gambling in casinos. If they lose or win a certain amount of money, that's it. They're done. I explained to Terrible Herb and his listeners how I understood where they're coming from, because I can say the same thing about myself when it comes to alcohol and drugs. I went on to say how there was once a time when you'd bring up the personal responsibility card to those inflicted with those addictions, and you'd be embarrassed if a family member was an alcoholic or drug addict. But that came to an end back in the 80s when the AMA, American Medical Association, declared those types of addictions a disease. Compulsive gambling may or may not be a disease, but it's definitely the most expensive addiction. I told this one caller if an alcoholic or drug addict spent on their high what a gambler does in minutes on theirs, they'd OD. One caller asked why the AMA hasn't made compulsive gambling a disease. I told him unlike alcohol and drugs, where most of us have had loved ones afflicted with those disorders, especially drugs going back to those hippie days in the late 60s when the youth of America started getting high for entertainment, the compulsive gambling epidemic is in its early stages. But with the expansion of casino gambling throughout the country and soon here in our state, it won't be long before compulsive gambling becomes a disease. Richie, are you saying is casino gambling is the same as getting high with booze and drugs? Terrible Herb asked. It was for me and a lot of others, I said. And watch what happens here in our state when casino gambling becomes legal. You're going to see Pennsylvanians, especially seniors, in our casinos day and night. They'll be cashing in their Social Security checks and getting high on gambling. While that's happening, their loved ones will be happy knowing mom and dad are enjoying their golden years. That is, until they have to move in with them. A woman caller asked why you don't hear more stories like the one I've written. I told her because unlike alcoholics and drug addicts, compulsive gamblers, especially casino ones, can't come out of the closet and tell their stories because their skeletons are more incriminating with things like tax evasion, embezzlement, larceny, insurance fraud, arson, and in some cases murder. Believe me when I tell you, I said, gambling, especially casino gambling, is the most expensive addiction, and one that many state lawmakers will condone in order to fill state tax gambling coffers. Before I got off the line with her, I said, when a compulsive gambler comes to rob you, they won't be slurring their words or staggering. You'll never see it coming. I was told it was going to an hour-long show, but the calls kept coming in. It ended up over 2 hours. Before I left, Terrible Herb told me it was a great show and hopes to have me back soon. Then we took a picture together and he gave me a cassette with the recorded show on it. The following week, I got a call from a TV producer from one of the news stations here in Philly. They want me to come in to talk about my book. Before doing that show, I launched my website. I ordered another 100 books. I did the show, and before it ended, I gave out my website address so people could order the book. I sold over 60 books that week. Right after doing that TV show, I started getting calls from radio, TV news stations, and newspaper reporters throughout Pennsylvania. Before 2001 ended, I did a few more TV news, radio shows, and I had stories written up about me in news publications throughout the state. It wasn't because of interest in my book. It was because people wanted to hear my opinion on what's going to happen if Pennsylvania gets casinos. In November of that year, Ed Fisher was elected governor of the state of Pennsylvania. In March of 2003, the Iraqi War officially began, and Pennsylvania legislators put forth Act 71. If passed, this legislation will legalize casino gambling throughout Pennsylvania. It wasn't long after that when I got a call from a Pennsylvania House representative named Paul Kimber. He heard me on the radio, saw me on TV, and read articles about me. He asked me if I would like to testify at the first gaming hearing that's being held in Philadelphia on Monday, May 5th. That's the week Raymond and Sharon are getting married. I told him I would, and he said he's going to send me a copy of Act 71 along with information of who else is going to be testifying at the hearing. I received an email from and Representative Kimber with Act 71 and other information on who's going to be there, along with what the Gaming Oversight Committee that he's a member of is going to be addressing. What I learned after reading through all the mumbo-jumbo legal talk is that the first phase of casino gambling in Pennsylvania will be slot parlors at 14 locations. That made sense to me because it will take no time to get these joints up and running. And that's what the state wants to do when receiving 55% on gross revenues collected from slots. That's 55 cents from every dollar patrons lose filling state tax gaming coffers. That, along with them not being full-blown casinos like you have in Atlantic City, makes it easier to get the support needed from the public in order for our pro-gaming state legislators to pass Act 71. But I know, and so does our legislators who supported this legislation, that it wouldn't be long before the slot parlors become full-blown casinos. I got to the hearing and the room was packed with TV and other news media outlets, gaming lobbyists, civic and religious leaders. There's tables set up where members from the Gaming Oversight Committee are sitting. Representative Kimber gets up from the table and comes over to where I'm sitting. He introduced himself. He said my safeguards were an eye-opener and he shared them with other members on the committee. Many of them agreed they should be in our gaming law, especially the monthly statement one. He told me he's going to call on me to speak right after the chairman of the Gaming Control Board, Gregory Lipton, gives his presentation. After all the introductions, the hearing started. For almost an hour, the chairman of the Gaming Board gave all the upsides of having casinos in Pennsylvania. From the tax revenues that are going to eliminate property tax for seniors, saving the horse racing industry, and bringing good-paying jobs to the Commonwealth. The more he talked, the more I realized how clueless this guy is on how casinos operate. He ended his presentation by bringing up Governor Fisher's favorite line on how Pennsylvania is losing all that gaming tax revenue to the casinos of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Afterwards, he took some questions from the representatives on the Oversight Committee. One was how the Gaming Control Board is going to address the casino compulsive gambling problem. The chairman answered with the 24-hour 1-800-GAMBLER helpline number on signs that will be installed where patrons can see them throughout the casinos, and a self-exclusion program that allows individuals with a gambling problem to voluntarily ban themselves from casinos. Chairman Lipton left and I took a seat. Representative Kimber introduced me as a gaming activist and author of the book, The Last Buy-In. I thanked him for inviting me to speak, and then I said, before I get started, I want to get one thing straight here. I'm not a gaming activist, I'm a casino gambling degenerate. And unlike the gentleman who spoke before me, along with many of you in this room, what I'm about to say comes from true-life casino gambling experiences. After that, you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's eyes were on me, and so were the media cameras. So I told my casino story. After I finished, I read out loud my 7 safeguards that should be put in our gaming bill in order to prevent our casino operators from breeding compulsive gambling degenerates like me. My first safeguard, I said, is not to have our casinos open 24/7. I've gambled in casinos during those early morning hours, and that's when you'll see pathological gambling in full bloom. My second safeguard is no free booze for those gambling. What other industry is allowed to serve you free booze while doing business? Can you imagine when buying a home, car, or borrow money from a bank and they're serving you free booze during the transaction? My third safeguard is no cashing personal, payroll, travelers, or third-party checks, and no credit card cash advancements. My fourth safeguard is no ATM machines on the casino floor. Why make it easy for the compulsive gamblers to feed their addiction? My fifth safeguard is no interest-free credit. The reason casinos don't charge interest is because they're not giving you cash. They're giving you chips and slot credits that eventually you're going to lose, and now you owe the casinos real money. Even the few who do win when playing with credit are most likely hook and will be back to try to win more. My number 6 safeguard is no comping. The comps make casino gamblers justify their losses. In other words, when they lose thousands of dollars, they'll deduct the value of the comps they received and the loss won't feel so bad. Comps are the syringe the gaming industry uses to deliver their drug. My seventh safeguard is to make our casinos mail out monthly statements to the 90% or more of casino patrons who will be enrolled in casino reward card programs. These programs track casino patrons' play with comp cards. So being this system is already in place, how about making our casino operators mail those patrons monthly statements, showing them their wins, losses, along with the amount of time they gambled? Again, you could hear a pin drop, so I said, now here's the sad part about my 7 safeguards. No casino operator would open a casino in Pennsylvania under those conditions. And those of you who want to bring casinos to Pennsylvania know that, and that's why you'll never put them in our gaming bill. None of the oversight committee members asked me a question, which didn't surprise me. I'm sure they had no idea what I was talking about. I got out of my seat, and as I'm leaving the room, a reporter from a TV station in Pittsburgh stopped me. He told me they're going to air the hearing and my testimony tonight. He asked if he could interview me. I spent over a half hour with him and his crew. As I was leaving the building, I heard my name called out. I turned around and saw Representative Kimber. He thanked me for coming, and he asked me to help him write legislation to put forth this voting session that will make casinos send monthly statements. Chapter 36. Besides documenting and videotaping every time I got to speak to our lawmakers, I've also kept a log of the crime stories reported in the media by people who in most cases never gambled before until casinos became available. I'm not talking about the petty crime like cars being broken into, casino patrons being robbed after leaving the casino, or the compulsive gamblers leaving their children in their cars in unbearable weather while they're in the casino gambling. What I'm talking about are those who got caught stealing over $100,000 to feed their casino addiction. You'll notice on the list I've written that when our casinos became full-blown with table games in 2010, the amounts of money stolen is greater. Who knows how many more are out there who didn't get caught? October 15, 2009. After Lancaster Farmer's death, daughter embezzles $140,000 to pay off her casino debt. November 17, 2009. Bookkeeper accused of stealing $176,000 from Scranton law firm. Lost it all in casino. November 23, 2010. Payback for Philly casino gambler who bilked boss for $200,000. January 29, 2010. Murraysville Credit Union employee steals $227,000 and gambles it away at a local casino. July 1, 2010. Former Pittsburgh nurse falsifies cancer treatment insurance claims for $286,000, said she was addicted to slot machines. August 15, 2010. City tax collector could not resist casino $325,000. September 17, 2010. Stolen funds used in casino by Springfield woman, $389,000. November 11, 2010. Woman pleads guilty for embezzling $330,000, cites gambling addiction. February 17, 2011. Harrisburg couple embezzled from school board $366,000. February 23, 2011. Cecil County Casino high roller imprisoned for stealing $913,000. March 1, 2011. Woman gets prison term for embezzling $395,000. April 20, 2011. Hellertown woman stole $290,000 from county nonprofit. April 21, 2011. Ex-Lower Swatara Township tax collector charged for embezzling over $324,000. June 23, 2011. Manager jailed for theft from Hanover business $330,000. August 22, 2011. Scranton man arrested for allegedly stealing $400,000. November 21, 2011. Schuylkill woman embezzles from club $311,000. December 23, 2011. Monroeville bookkeeper steals almost $440,000 to support her casino gambling. December 24, 2011. Indiana County man charged with embezzling $1 million to pay off casino debt. January 29, 2012. Archdiocese of Philadelphia employee embezzles $1 million and gambles it away in casinos. February 25, 2012. Former financial manager for the Penn Allegheny Health System siphoned more than $700,000 to gamble at casinos. March 8, 2012. Bristol woman steals nearly $300,000 from estate of a former friend and loses it at casinos in Bensalem and Philadelphia. March 12, 2012. Secretary stole staggering $643,000 from ambulance company, lost it all in casinos. May 21, 2012. South Whitehall casino gambling couple, in an elaborate embezzlement scheme using local residents' utility payments, stole $850,000 to support their casino gambling habit. The monthly statement legislation, House Bill 560, never made it to the floor for a vote that session. In February of 2012, Representative Kimber put forth for the fourth time House Bill 736, Casinos Monthly Statements, in the new session. Most state reps and senators agree it's a good idea but don't want to commit to it until further studies. That didn't surprise me. They've been using that excuse from day one. Let's not forget who we're dealing with here. 4 out of the 6 lawmakers who were instrumental in bringing casino gambling to our state have been convicted of crimes after our gaming bill passed that were unrelated to the casinos. One Philly senator, who was Governor Fisher's right-hand man and the main architect of our gaming law, was convicted of defrauding the state Senate, a nonprofit and maritime museum. He had Senate staff renovated his mansion. The nonprofit provided luxury cars and political polling. The museum charter yachts for vacations to Martha's Vineyard. He was incarcerated for 4 years for stealing $4.2 million from the state. The following year, House Bill 736 passed respectively by a vote of 189 to 2 in our state house. From there, it moved to the Senate, where it has been stuck for months in a quagmire in the Economic and Recreational Development Committee, which oversee gambling issues. It's chaired by Senator Jane Berlin. After pestering her staff at her Capitol and home offices, I finally got her on the phone. I asked her if she will allow the bill to move out of her committee anytime soon. "Not likely," she replied. When I asked her why, she said, "The Gaming Control Board already has regulations that cover what that proposal would do, so the monthly statements are not needed." Before getting off the phone with Senator Jane Berlin, I asked her if her decision is based on the casino in her district paying a $10 million hosting fee annually, and she hung up on me. After that ordeal, I decided to hang up my casino crusade addiction for now. But before doing that, I'm going to make one big splash in the casino cesspool. I wrote an op-ed piece on the demise of my monthly statement safeguard titled "The Paper Trail." I sent it out to all my media contacts throughout the country. In it, I explained how I got it put forth in 4 sessions in the State House and once in our Senate. That's 8 years under 2 administrations and 2 governors who both said they support casinos sending out monthly statements when I first made them aware of this provision. In the op-ed, I listed all the benefits these statements would provide to the innocent loved ones when a family member bites the casino apple, and the reasons why casino operators don't want to send them. From their fear that patrons, after reviewing their monthly statements, will curb their casino gambling or possibly eliminating it completely. Then I wrote what the casino operators really fear, which is a paper trail that can be used in a lawsuit when a casino patron loses everything, or one commits suicide over their addiction. Now, most people aren't aware of this, but no one has ever sued a casino over their gambling losses and won. Many have tried, but to no avail. So I wrote what could happen if someone who never gambled until the casino opened in their backyard commits suicide from their gambling addiction, and their loved ones get a lawyer to sue the casino. Most lawyers would tell them that they don't have a case because of personal responsibility. But when a lawyer is shown a stack of monthly statements with the deceased gaming activity on them, now that would be a game changer. Now, if you're wondering what I mean by that, let me explain. Here's what monthly statements will show. Let's say the deceased was gambling excessively and losing thousands of dollars week after week while being served free alcohol beverages, cashing personal checks, using ATM machines, getting casino interest-free credit, while justifying their losses with the comps they're receiving in an environment that has no consumer protection and is open 24/7. If a lawyer were to present this information on written statements from the casino, I can't imagine that a jury wouldn't find the casino liable for breeding this once normal person who never gambled before into a compulsive gambling degenerate. Now, if that were to happen and one case is awarded to the plaintiff, the floodgates would open and the gaming industry would be facing the same legal problems that the tobacco industry and the Catholic Church been addressing since they've been exposed. This is the main reason why my safeguard will never become the law, and why both governors here in Pennsylvania and the one in Massachusetts threw me and my casino monthly statements under the bus once they had control of the casino cash cow. Their main concern is filling gaming tax coffers and could care less about the patrons and their loved ones who will get buried in these joints. The op-ed I wrote got published in a Philly newspaper and got picked up by newspaper publications in other casino states. The paper trail story got me interviews throughout the country, mostly by phone and with Skype that lets you do online video calls. A Detroit TV station had me on to talk about how the 3 casinos there are doing over $1 billion a year, while the city of Detroit files for bankruptcy. Chapter 37. By the end of April, I have 3 streaming seasons written, and that's when I got the call from Roy Stevens. He apologized for the delay, but he didn't want to talk to me until he had something substantial. And then he gave me the good news. He said a major production company wants to make an offer to buy the rights to my novel, and they want me to come to their studio in Hollywood as soon as possible. He said they will have their corporate jet take me and bring me back. I asked him what's he looking to get, and he said, normally 15%, but a deal this size he'll take 10%. Then I asked him if I need to sign a contract with him. He said, I'll give you one if you take their offer. I told him to set it up. That night I took Melissa out for dinner at her favorite restaurant. When she asked what's the special occasion, I told her what Roy said. She was happy for me, and I told her if it wasn't for her support, I wouldn't have gotten it done. I wanted her to go with me, but she hated flying on commercial flights, so it didn't surprise me when she said, there's no way I'm getting in a small airplane like that and going anywhere. We had an after-dinner cocktail and Melissa made a toast. Here's to my husband's TV series, she said. A great but tragic story that needs to be told. 3 days later, I'm sitting in a corporate Gulfstream jet headed to Tinseltown, where dreams come true. The jet seated 12 people, but only half the plane had passengers. I got to sit by myself, which was fine by me. I needed to work on my pitch. Roy told me I'm going to be there for a few days, so pack enough clothes, he said. I'll be comped a nice hotel room, and he'll pick me up at the airport. A commercial flight from Philly to LA takes about 5 hours. I'm figuring a small plane like this is going to take at least an hour longer. Halfway through the flight, I took a nap. I got awakened by the pilot when he announced we were 20 minutes away from landing. I slid open the window cover and looked out. I saw nothing but desert, which seemed strange to me. I asked the flight attendant where we are, and she said, keep looking out the window, we're coming up on the city of Las Vegas. I thought she was joking until I saw the city and all the hotels and casinos. I've wanted to call Roy, but I couldn't on the plane. My mind is racing as I waited for everyone to exit the jet. I'm thinking of mob movie scenes like the one where the guy walks into a meeting thinking he's getting made, instead he gets shot in the head, and the one where they talked about all the bodies buried in the Vegas desert. The pilot and co-pilot exit the cockpit. I asked the pilot if this is the end of the flight, and he said yes. Our next flight out is tomorrow morning to New Jersey. He asked if there's something wrong, and I said, I hope not. And I exit the plane with my suitcase in hand. As I'm walking across the tarmac, a black limo pulls up. The driver gets out and says, Mr. Venture. He opens the back door. Before getting in, I asked where we are going. He says the Illusions Hotel and Casino. I gave him my suitcase to put in the trunk. I took a seat in the back of the limo across from a gorgeous woman who says, hello, Richie. And I said, hello, Carla. Before she could say another word, I asked if she knew why I was here today. She said Joe called her last night from their new property in Massachusetts that's opening this weekend. He told her to pick me up at the airport today. He said it would make me feel more comfortable seeing a familiar face. I asked her if he told her that I was supposed to be going to Hollywood to discuss a TV streaming series deal. She said he didn't mention that. He just told her to make sure I'm satisfied with my accommodations. I asked her what they are. Similar to what they were in the Golden Mines, she said. You'll be staying in one of our suites, RF&B. Once you're settled in, I'll take you over to our corporate offices where you'll meet Joe's entertainment attorney, Grant Zuckerman. Carla, you once told me nothing's a secret in the casinos, so tell me what's really going on. Honestly, Richie, I'm not sure, but I do know Joe's film production company is interested in your book, which I read when it first came out. I found it very interesting, and so did my daughter. You have a daughter? I do. Her name is Shannon. You'll have to meet her before you leave. I may not be here long, I said, but I'd love to meet her. I'm sure you'll be here till at least tomorrow, so if you'd like, we all could have dinner together in one of our restaurants. She's going to be here tonight for the Outdoor Country Music Festival right here on our property. You'll be able to see it from your suite. Sounds good, so tell me what you know about your boss's film production company. All I can tell you is a lot of movie producers for many years have come to Vegas to get casino operators to finance their projects. Joe's been involved in some of the biggest movies made in the last 20 years. A few years back, he decided to open up his own film production company. They've been doing mostly TV series. I can't see why, Carla. He wants to do a story like mine. You'll find that out when you talk to Grant Zuckerman. Carla stayed with me while I checked into my suite. Once inside, she opens the draperies to show me where the concert is being held. I had a perfect view. Before she took me to my meeting with Zuckerman, we talked a little more about the last 30 years of our lives, mostly hers. She already knew mine from reading the book. Unlike me, she never remarried. Her relationship with DeVito went back to strictly business. She raised her daughter by herself, and from what she told me about her, she did a hell of a job. She graduated top of her class from University of Las Vegas with a degree in accounting. She went right to work for one of James Laurent's casinos that DeVito is managing. We left the suite and took the elevator down to the hotel lobby with another guest, a strange-looking dude who was in the suite next to mine. Carla knew him. She introduced us by first name only, and me as his new neighbor. The guy just nodded his head and didn't say a word. Carla looked at me and rolled her eyes. We got off the elevator and this strange dude walked into the casino. I asked Carla what's his story and she said he's a weirdo who's been coming there since they've opened. I asked her if he's a big player and she said huge. Plays the video poker machine for hours, betting thousands of dollars a play. We walked into the corporate offices, then took the elevator up to Zuckerman Penthouse office. Once inside, Carla introduced me and then she left. Zuckerman looks to be in his mid-50s. He's dressed like a cowboy, not a lawyer. He tells me to have a seat at his desk. He goes over to the bar and asked if I'd like a drink. I told him not now, but I may need one later, and he laughed. He comes back and sits down. He takes out a remote control and opens the draperies behind him, showing a spectacular view of the Vegas Strip. He starts off the conversation by apologizing for not letting me know the meeting was switched from their Hollywood office to their Vegas one. He said there's no malice or ill intention here. The rescheduling had to do with him being the head of the entertainment division. He said he had to be in Vegas because of the country festival event. And his boss, Mr. DeVito, knowing how I feel about the industry, figured I might not come to Vegas. So it would be better to wait until I got there to explain why here and not in Hollywood. Now that I'm here, what are we talking about? I asked. Richie, I'm going to make it short and sweet. Joe and I love the story, even with all its casino negativity. I can't give you all the details today, or the names of the A-list director and actor we have on board to do the project. What I can tell you is we're going to put as much money as it takes to make it a success. So Grant, what's in it for me? To make it legit, we're talking $100,000 on the books, which after taxes you'll clear approximately $60,000. We'll give you another $1 million in cash. That's $1,100,000 for the exclusive rights to your book, the pilot, and the episode you've written. How soon can this be done? I asked. The contract is already written for the $100,000. I can write you out a check today. The $1 million in cash is a little tricky, let me explain. He points to the wall behind me that has a gold panel with the Illusions Hotel and Casino engraved on it. He pushes a button under his desk and the panel slowly slides open. He tells me to walk over to get a better look. I see glass shelves with stacks of $5,000 grade chips from multiple casinos. Before I could say a word, Grant says, "If we cut you a check for it all, you'll have to pay taxes on it. And if you owe any back taxes, maybe them too. There's $250,000 in $5,000 grade chips from 4 of our properties on the Strip. What you're gonna have to do is cash a little under $10,000 a day in each casino, and nobody knows a thing. It shouldn't take more than a month to cash out. During that time, we'll comp you a room R, F, and B in each hotel casino where you can get a safe deposit box to hold the money." I walked back to his desk and said, "I'll have that drink now." He poured me a shot of Patron tequila. I told him it's a lot to digest, so how about I sleep on it and give him an answer before I leave tomorrow? He said, "Absolutely." Before leaving Grant's office, I asked him about Roy Stevens' 10%, and he said, "They'll take care of Roy." We made plans to meet up tomorrow for lunch, and my answer. He gave me a pass to get into the country music festival that evening. On my way back to my suite, my mind was racing once more. I called Melissa from my cell phone by the outside pool. I was too paranoid to call from the hotel suite, thinking it may be bugged. I got her on the phone and told her about the switch from Hollywood to here. That really upset her. I didn't go into full details about the meeting. I told her not to worry, everything's fine, but when she gets off the phone to book me the earliest flight back to Philly. I also told her to only call me on my cell phone. If she can't get me, just leave a message with the flight details and don't call the hotel. It was a little before 5 p.m. when I got back to the suite. The message light on the phone is blinking. I pick it up and it's a message from Carla. She made us a reservation for 7 p.m. at the steakhouse. She said her daughter can't wait to meet me. I'm not sure if I can trust Carla, so if Melissa gets me a flight tonight, I'm out of here. If she doesn't, I'll meet Carla and her daughter for dinner and act as though everything's all right. I had an hour or so to kill, so I laid in bed and thought about how ruthless these cocksuckers are. They're figuring the temptation will be so great that it won't be long before I'll be back on the table getting high with those $5,000 grays. It's a smart move. They'll get their money back and stop my story from ever being told. But unfortunately for them, I'm not that sick fuck I used to be. I was just about to take a shower when Melissa called. I told her to hold on and I went out into the hallway to talk. The earliest flight she could get me back to Philly was at 11:30 a.m. the following morning. She felt bad and she knew I was disappointed too that the whole thing was just another casino scam. I tried cheering her up by telling her it's a hell of a way to get more material for the series. I hung up and I headed back down the hallway to my suite. Before I got there, the elevator doors open and out steps the weird dude next door with 2 large pieces of luggage. I gave him a friendly wave and he just nodded his head. Before meeting up with Carla and her daughter, I planned my paranoia exit for the following morning. I'm going to get up early and have breakfast in one of the hotel restaurants. Afterwards, I'll take a cab to another casino on the Strip. I'll keep an eye out for anyone following me. From there, I'll take a cab to the airport. I'm going to leave my suitcase and the rest of my belongings in the suite. When I get home, I'll call the hotel and tell them I had an emergency. I'll have them ship back the suitcase and my belongings. I left the suite and took the elevator down to the floor where the restaurants are. Because of the country music festival, many of the guests are dressed in Western attire. When I walked into the steakhouse, Carla and her daughter were already seated. I got to our table and I couldn't take my eyes off her beautiful daughter Shannon. She was dressed in a black leather Western outfit and wearing a cowgirl hat. She reminded me of the time when her mother was dressed like that at the Golden Mines. I sat down and Carla introduces me to her daughter. She extended her hand and I took it in mine. I'm staring at her and I couldn't believe what I'm seeing, so I take out my phone. I show her my screensaver pic of Raymond and his family. "That's my son Raymond," I said. "Look how much you guys look alike. It's amazing. You could pass for his sister." Carla looks at Shannon, then back to me. Their eyes filled up with tears. Carla says, "She is his sister, his half-sister." Now my eyes are filled with tears. After wiping the tears away and bottling up our emotions, we talked about better times to come over dinner. I couldn't blame Carla for not telling me about Shannon, especially her knowing all the bullshit I was going through back then. When Shannon questioned her on who her father was, she told her that I was a gambler who got involved with the wrong people and who disappeared a few months before she was born. She also told her that there were rumors going around Atlantic City that I was murdered by the Philly mob. It wasn't until a few years ago on her 25th birthday when Carla told her about me. Since then, she's been following me on my website and the internet. So Carla and she decided it's time for us to meet. After we ate, Shannon went to the ladies' room. While she was there, Carla asked me how I made out with Grant. Jokingly, I told her he gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. Then I told her I'm meeting with him again tomorrow to finalize the deal. We left the restaurant and they went out to the country music festival. I told them I'll meet up with them in about an hour. I called Melissa before going in my hotel suite. I told her I just ate dinner and I'm going to go check out the festival. I didn't mention anything about Carla and Shannon. She had enough on her plate, but I did tell her I had some exciting and unexpected good news that I can't wait to share with her. She told me to have a good time and to call her when I get back from the concert. I enter my suite and I see flashing lights moving back and forth across the windows. I hear loud music playing. I open the sheer drapes and look out. There's a huge crowd of people gathering at the concert. I walk through the hotel lobby and out of the hotel. I worked my way through the crowd. I showed my pass to a security guard and he let me into the roped-off VIP seating area. An usher takes me to where Carla and Shannon are sitting. I was about to sit down when I hear fireworks going off. I looked in the direction where it sounded like they were coming from. I see people scattering and ducking behind seats and barriers. It's total chaos. I'm thinking someone screwed up with the fireworks display, but then I saw blood spurting out of people as they fell to the ground. I turned and told Carla and Shannon to get on the ground and stay down. Then I felt a stinging sensation in the back of my head. I reached back and I felt a hole. I looked at my hand, it was full of blood. Everything got hazy and everyone is moving in slow motion. 2 days later, I woke up in a hospital room with an IV needle in my vein and a Las Vegas police officer next to me. I tried to get up, but I was too weak. I asked the cop what's going on, and before he could answer me, a doctor comes into the room with a nurse. The cop gets up out of his chair. He takes out his cell phone and walks out of the room. The doctor sits me up. The nurse starts removing the bandage wrapped around my head. The doctor's checking the back of my head. He starts asking me questions on how I feel. I asked him, where am I and what am I doing here? You're a lucky man, Mr. Venture, he said. A millimeter more and that bullet would have crippled you for life or worse. Are you telling me I got shot? You sure did. If you're feeling weak, it's because you lost a lot of blood. He told the nurse to clean up the wound and to put a smaller bandage back on. While she's doing that, he asked me if I remembered being at the Illusions Country Musical Festival. I remember, I said. I was with my daughter and her mother. Where are they? Please tell me they're all right. Before he answered, a different Las Vegas cop, a big guy with a gold star badge and cowboy hat on, comes in with two other guys in suits. The sheriff-looking cop asks the doctor if it's all right for them to talk to me. Sheriff, he's all yours, the doctor said. The doctor tells me he'll be back a little later and he and the nurse leave the room. The big sheriff moves a chair up to the side of my bed. The two guys in suits are standing on the other side. The sheriff introduces himself as Las Vegas Sheriff Bob Warner. Then he introduces me to FBI Special Agent Ryan Gallagher and his partner agent Daniel Hanahan. The sheriff asked me if I was aware of what happened at the concert. I said, I only remember a stinging sensation, a hole in my head, blood on my hands, and people running and screaming. So, tell me what happened. Agent Gallagher asked me why I was staying at the Illusions. I asked him what's that got to do with anything. He said they did a background check on me and it seemed strange that someone like me, who many in the gaming industry call the casino antichrist, and who's in the casino's black book, would be staying at a Las Vegas hotel casino. I was supposed to be in Hollywood, I said, meeting with a film production company that is interested in buying the rights to my book. My so-called agent never told me that Joe DeVito owned the company. I was already in the air when the meeting got switched to here because DeVito's entertainment lawyer, a guy named Grant Zuckerman, had to be here because of the country music festival. Then I'm sure this is all documented, Agent Gallagher said. Call the Illusions entertainment lawyer, Grant Zuckerman. He'll explain why I was there. Before you do that, I was with my daughter and her mother at the concert. I need to know they're all right. And I gotta call my wife. Give me their names, Sheriff Warner said. I'll look into it. After I gave him their names, I told him Carla works at the Illusions. He got out of his chair and walked out of the room. While he was gone, Agent Gallagher told me what they know so far about that night. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 60 people killed and over 800 wounded. I'm praying Carla and Shannon aren't in those statistics. I asked if it was a terrorist attack. We're not ruling that out, Agent Hanahan said. Then he shows me a picture of the mass shooter and asked me if I knew him. He tells me his name is Stuart Pollock. I'm looking at the picture and shaking my head in disbelief. I told them they're not going to believe this, but his weirdo is staying in the hotel suite right next to mine. Agent Gallagher says, that's why we're here today. The sheriff comes back into the room and he hands me his cell phone. Carla's on it. She tells me her and Shannon were okay. They were at the hospital with me that night and the following day. Once the doctor told them how lucky I was after he operated, they went home to get some rest. She held onto my wallet and cell phone after giving my information to the emergency room staff. She said Melissa called my cell phone later that night after she saw the shooting on the news. Carla explained everything to her. Before hanging up, she tells me her and Shannon are on their way now to pick up Melissa at the airport. The sheriff left and the FBI agents stayed a little longer. They asked me if I noticed anything strange about my weird neighbor. I told them about the large suitcases I saw him bringing into his room, but that's it. Before leaving, they gave me their cards and said to let either one of them know when I'm leaving town. The nurse comes in and tells me I have another visitor, a reporter, Liz Newman, from the Las Vegas Sun newspaper. I told her to send her in. She's the reporter who wrote the article. You lost how much last month? That didn't go over well here in Vegas, but got me a lot of media coverage. Liz comes in and after asking me how I'm feeling, she tells me that one of her contacts in the sheriff office told her that they're looking at the possibility of there being a second shooter. Her contact sent her the list of the deceased and injured people that they're going to release this morning. She dropped everything after seeing my name and came right over. I told her I would love to give her my story of why I was here, but I want to hear what the authorities come up with. She said once the word gets out that I was in the hotel suite next to the shooter, the media is going to be all over me. Before leaving, I promised I would call her first with my story. It was early afternoon when Melissa came into my room. She put her arms around me. She's crying hysterically. I told her I'm fine, and I'm sorry that I didn't tell her about Carla and Shannon. She said they were both so nice to her when they picked her up at the airport and took her to the hotel. Carla gave her my phone, wallet, and my suitcase from the Illusions. She told Melissa to tell me that her and Shannon will come by tomorrow after work. Melissa gives me my phone and tells me to call Raymond. He's been texting and leaving messages. I got him on the phone. I told him I'm okay and I'll be home soon. He was upset with me for not telling him about my meeting in Hollywood. I told him I didn't want to get him all excited just in case it was nothing, which it was. While I'm explaining to him what went down, leaving Carla and Shannon's story out for now, there's commotion going on outside my room. I told Raymond I gotta go. We'll talk later. Before getting off the phone, I told him I love him and to give my grandchildren a kiss from Poppy. Melissa walks over to the doorway. She tells me hospital security guards and staff are stopping what looks like reporters and TV crews from coming this way. Sheriff Warner comes in with the original cop who I saw when I first woke up. I introduce him to Melissa and he introduces us to Officer Jake Ramsey. He said Jake is going to stay out front until things cool down. I asked him what's going on and he said somehow it leaked out about me being in the hotel suite next to the shooter. And that stirred up a lot of conspiracy theories about me. He said to watch the early news broadcast on TV, they'll be covering it. The sheriff left and Melissa put on the TV, and as we wait for the early evening news to come on, Melissa's phone rings. She answers it and tells me it's for me, somebody named Grant. I get on the phone and Grant asks how I'm doing. Then he told me it's important for us to meet as soon as possible. I told him I may be released tomorrow. If I am, I'll call and make arrangements. I wanted to ask him how he got Melissa's number, but she was right next to me and I didn't want to worry her. I did ask him why he called her phone and not mine. He said he'll explain why when we meet. He told me not to speak to the media until after we talk. I gave Melissa back her phone and she asked what's that about. I told her he's the entertainment lawyer I talked to at the Illusions. She asked me how he got her number. I told her I gave it to him just in case he couldn't reach me. I guess he got the numbers mixed up. The news comes on and sure enough my name is brought up in the mass shooting story. The reporter covering it is out front of the hospital looking up at my room. He says, "Why was Richard Venture, a gaming activist for over 20 years, known to many in the gaming industry as the Gaming Antichrist, and author of The Last Buy-In, a fictional story exploiting the negative side of casino gambling, doing in the hotel suite next to Stuart Pollock's suite the night of the mass shooting?" They're showing a video of the Broken Illusions hotel windows from where the shots came from. People are screaming, running, and hiding while being shot at. The reporter continues, "With this amount of carnage, it's hard to believe that the shooter, Stuart Pollock, acted alone. It wasn't long after that when I got bombarded with calls, text messages, and emails from my media sources. I didn't answer them. I only took calls from Raymond and my sister. They were concerned about my safety after the story aired on the East Coast. I told them I'm fine, but I couldn't go into all the details. Now I'll explain everything when I get home. I always said my story needed something big in order for it to get the public's attention. My casino monthly statements didn't do it, but getting shot along with a $1 million casino chip bribe just might."